Hello and welcome back to our study on the next area of project management, which is human resources management. The last one what we saw was the quality management. Just as we always do, a quick review. They had three main processes. I'm not going to go into the details of this right now. Just the three main processes we talked about was planning quality, planning quality assurance, and quality control. They covered the three phases of the life cycle of a project life cycle. That was a planning, executing, monitoring, and control phase of the quality. As we saw, it's basically the inherent characteristics which define the fitness of use of that particular product which has been delivered. Unless the product which is delivered is fit to use by the user of that product or a service, we have not achieved the required quality of the product. Quality applies irrespective of what kind or size or of the project. Everywhere the quality management would be required. The three processes and the tools and techniques that we saw in each one of them are here's an overview on the screen which you could refer to. You can see the tools and the techniques are more or less same between the planning and the control process. It is just the context changes of how the same tool can be used. We talked about it during our discussion. So let us move ahead and go to the topic of our day, which is human resource management. So what is human resource management? What exactly are we talking about here? What does it include? It's basically a process that organizes, manages and leads project team. When we say organizes, what does it really mean? What it really means is, or manages it also, it means is basically assigning roles and responsibilities to the people working on the project. It is, the earlier the teams are involved at the start of the life cycle of the project, it is better we achieve a success in planning the project needs. It is better to get the teams to commit to the project deliverables, to commit to the project activities. So what we are saying is, the earlier we add the expertise or the skills or the resources required to the team, it strengthens the commitment to the project. It also, project management team is a subset of the project team. It is basically what it also needs is, it is responsible, the project management is responsible for the leadership activities in initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling of the entire project activity. It is this team who is going to actually perform and plan and monitor and execute the project. The sizes of the teams would vary depending on the projects. Irrespective of what the size of the project is, there will always be a team required to be managed, whether the team is of 2 people or if it is of 100 people or 20 people. That will vary depending on the project scope and the size of the project. It normally also management of project human resource also includes influencing the project team and having a professional and ethical behavior while executing the project. This is this part forms the part of the project management team as part of the human resources management. Like we have been seeing in all of the earlier knowledge areas, these two knowledge areas, the human resource management, consist of 4 main processes as required to manage the project. These are typically developing a team, acquiring a team, developing a plan for the resource required, acquiring and then managing the team. Let us look into each one of them in detail, and as you see, it's the same type of diagram here. Also you're seeing the same type of chart about what are the inputs and outputs for each one of these processes, what are the tools and techniques that we are using for each one of these. So the first one is to develop a plan. When we are developing a project or a human resource plan, what exactly are we doing? So our first process in the human resource management is developing a human resource plan. Now what does really a human resource plan contain? What is the scope of planning, what are the activities which go into this plan? What are the inputs which go into the plan? Now if you look at it, it's basically we are identifying and documenting and assigning project roles, responsibilities and reporting relationship on the project. Basically what we are doing is we are forming an org structure for that particular project. We are saying, actually defining in details who are the people involved performing a particular activity, what are their responsibilities and who are they reporting those to. So we are identifying the role, say like of a team leader. We are identifying a role of a team member. What is he or she going to do? Who is he or she going to report? How will they go into the project team leader, or how will the project team leader in turn, what are his roles and responsibilities, and how will he or she report to the project manager? We are creating the actual staffing plan. By staffing plan, what do we mean here? The staffing plan is nothing but the plan giving the details of actual resources who will work on the project and when they would be required to work on the project. So you have the end date and the start date and the end date of when the resources are required. That would be detailed into the staffing plan. We would also will be detailing the kind of skills required for that resource to be included in the project team. And so we are saying when and what required will be part of the staffing plan. We are also going to actually put into the plan of the acquisition of the staff. That is, when are we going to actually acquire them? You know, how are we going to train them? Are those resources already working, or are they available to the project? Do we have those kind of resource skills, or are they scarce resources? All these things need to be considered when we are creating a staffing plan. We also need not the human resource plan. We also need to not only take into consideration how to acquire resources, but how we are going to actually appreciate them, how are we going to measure their performance, how are we going to reward them. Everything will will form part of the human resource plan at this point of time. So what we are saying, it will include the training needs, team building strategy, how are we going to motivate the team, how are we going to keep them together, how are we to inspire them to work, how are we going to measure the performance, how are we going to recognize and reward as per the plans. So this is very, the whole human resource plan is very tightly linked to the communication plan also, because it is also going to take into consideration how the information is collected and distributed amongst the teams. We are also going to talk about, this is also going to have repercussions and effect on the project cost, schedules, or the risk involved on the project, or how are they going to do the quality, and other areas all going to have multiple repercussive effect based on the human resources available, the skills available with the team. So it's pretty integrated one into another, and this all comes together while developing a human resource plan. the key inputs, like I said, activity, resource. Remember, when we were doing scheduling, we actually created a activity list. We created, based on the work breakdown structure, we identified a work package. Based on the work package, we've gone and created a work schedule. So based on those work schedule, based on the work packages, we have now will be identifying those activities, and for those activities, what are the skills required. The next comes is, how do we source them? Basically, when you are going to source them, you need a checklist of the type of, say I have to manufacture a car. What do I need to do manufacture a car? Do I need an automobile engineer? Do I need somebody to look after the assembly line? What is the design of the car? How is it going to be marketed? Based on that, how are the orders going to be collected? Everything will keep going into, from start to finish, anything and everything to do, every activity to do with the car, right from its getting an order of the car to actually selling the order, manufacturing and selling the order, acquiring the material for it. Everything will form of the part which will convert into the human resources required to perform that particular activity. So when we say activity resource requirement, we are talking about the human resources required to perform that activity on this project. We are restricting ourselves only to the human resources. It will also, so it will be a major input. The WBS structure would be a major input to the developing a human resource plan. Then we are talking about other environmental aspects. What is the basically organization's culture of the performing organization? Here what I mean is, typically, are the resources available? Are such kind of roles actually defined by the organization? The person responsible for it, what are his, are the responsibilities clearly defined? Would he be able to perform? If he does perform, how is his performance going to be measured? All these would be part of the organization picture. Again, personal admin policies. What does the organization say? If we say, for instance, we do not have a particular resource available, in that case, do we go out and hire that particular resource? What would be the cost of actually interviewing and hiring such a resource? It's going to have a long-term effect. It is not going to be limited to the project. Then what happens to the resource at the end of the project? So, or do we just go ahead and hire a contractor who can do the job while the project is being executed? So all these will form of the will form part of the policies. Again, market place conditions. Now, are there really resources that we need available in the market? Will play a big role in defining or acquiring the resource we need, the human resource we need. There are other inputs for creating the human resource plan. Those are like other templates for org chart and position description. If it's readily available, it is going to save a lot of time for the project manager and the project team to create the human resource plan required, because that would be a starting point as a base which you can further elaborate and customize to the needs of the project. If it could be available from the previous projects or similar projects that we have done, or it could be at the generic organization level, that there is a org structure already existing which can be taken as a base and modified on. There are standard policies and procedures being available that could be also work as an asset or an input when planning for human resources. There are quite a few tools we could use for planning. This could be like I just said, org structure. There are different types of org structures or position descriptions, as it is also called, is the hierarchical type and or the matrix based responsibility chart or the text oriented form. So there are three formats that we are looking at. If you look at this diagram here, if you see, this is a hierarchical type where we are saying the project manager is at the top and there are team leads or the project leads happening and a project team reporting into the lead and in turn who reports to the manager. Now, this is basically a top down structure where the responsibilities are very clearly identified and mentioned. Very commonly used, most of the organizations would have these in some format or the other org structure available for the project manager to use. The other one is the matrix based responsibility chart where it spells out the responsibilities and matrix, and the third is the text oriented form. Text oriented form is nothing but a detailed description of roles and responsibilities of each person or each team member is very clearly defined in the text format. Like I said, it's a top down hierarchical is nothing but a graphical representation of a top down format of the organization. Let us look at the matrix based responsibility a bit more into detail. What happens is here is matrix based responsibility also is called as RAM or responsibility assignment matrix, or it also called as RACI charts. RACI chart is nothing but it stands for responsible, accountable, consult and inform charts. That is RACI is what it is. It's basically talks about the relationship between an activity to be performed and the team member. So, it's assigning relating a team member to his responsibilities or depending on what the requirement is. If you look at this chart here, there are 4 activities needed to be performed which in the first column, which is defining, designing, developing and testing a product. Okay, so assuming you have a project to work on where you have to define what the project is or defining the scope, you have to design it and develop it. Now, who are the people responsible? Now, these are the people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people are there, are your resources available on the project. Now, what RACI chart does is it's actually assigning a task or an activity to a person or relating that to it. It is clearly defining the responsibility. Like here, if you see, defining activity is responsibility of Ben, who is the second resource, whereas Anne is just accountable for it, and Carlos, Diana, Gina and Ed are basically just to be kept in the loop and informed that who is working on it. Similarly, in case of design, Carlos is responsible for designing the product, whereas others are either consulted for it or they are kept in the loop and informed about it. Similarly, test and develop, you can see. So, here using this chart, it would be very easy when creating a human resource plan to actually break it down into detailed level of activities at the work breakdown structure and assigning respondents. This ensures there is a clarity in the work to be performed by each team member, and he also knows for what is his performance is going to be measured at. Any ambiguity could be clarified using such charts. There are other techniques and tools which could be used for developing a plan, is like you could have a formal or informal interaction with the people in the organization, in the industry or in the professional environment. What happens is, like, there are policies and procedures which are typical to an industry. While you are interacting and networking with the people, you actually get to know the details of those, you collect the information which could be built into your plan, or it could be when you are doing a formal informal interaction, say with your team members during lunch meetings, during parties or during just conversation on your day-to-day business. Everything, all these information will go into the information collected during these interactions will go as part of your developing your human resource plan. There are other organizational theories basically provide information regarding the way in which people, teams and organizing units behave. There are quite a few organizations which clearly defines what kind of professional or ethical behavior is acceptable as part of your work culture, as part of your organization's work culture. All these things would be an input to the developing of a HR plan. It's only having these as inputs is going to help you reduce the time, shorten the time and the cost required for planning. So, these tools are going to be very effective as a planning tool. The key output for any developing this HR would be basically end of it you are going to have the roles and responsibilities very clearly defined. You are going to have a project org chart very clearly defined. You would also have your staffing management plan. Now, what would that management plan? Whether you are actually how are you going to acquire the staff? What are there going to be the resource calendars? By resource calendars would mean the time when the resources are going to be available. If anybody has a vacation plan, does it match or does it conflict with the project schedule? All these things can be very clearly clarified during the human resource planning. You can actually release the plan once it is done to the staffing team, staffing department, who will ensure that the project people required to work on the project are available on time. You are also going to, as part of this planning process, you are also going to identify the training needs of the team who are going to work on the project. How we are going to comply with the safety requirement and compliance requirements of the organization in general. Of course, rewards and recognition, we will talk into each one of these details. So, once we have actually developed a plan, the next process that we have identified is acquiring the project team. Now, what does it mean? Now, we have a plan in place. We know when do we need the team. We know what is the kind of skill set the team should possess. And now we are going to go ahead and actually acquire the team. Now, what are the activities required is basically when we say acquiring the team is a process of confirming availability and acquiring the team required. So, at this point of time, this is the process where we will actually start the work for the team to come on board and start the work on the project. The project manager or a team should be able to influence others to negotiate, acquire resources. What happens if the project manager says that he needs a team with XYZ skills for performing the activity? In that time frame, if the resource has been committed for some other project, or maybe he is not released from that other project, what does the project manager do? His whole planning would go for a toss. So, at such times it is very important as a skill that project manager should possess, that he should be able to influence others who are responsible to acquire that team. He should be able to convince the resource and the people who he is reporting to ensure that they are available for your project on time. So, this typically gets done during the planning stage. So, when you are acquiring the team, this planning and the thought process has already gone into place. Deviations from it is going to cost the budget, it is going to cost the quality, because if you are unable to get the resource, the deliverables performed by alternative resource may not be up to the mark what you had planned for. While doing all this and risking the dissatisfaction of the customer, it is also important that when you are acquiring an alternative resource on the project, there is no violation of any legal or regulatory criteria for the project. So, once we know what really, now that we know what it means to acquire a team, let us look at what are the various inputs we can use for acquiring a team. Typically, the project management plan, where the roles and responsibility org structures are there. What it also means evaluating what are the existing resources available with the organization, what is the competency level which is available with them, and what is the availability of that particular resource. Again, it also needs to evaluate whether the team all needs to be in a single location or multiple location, because that's going to make a difference to the availability of the resource based on the location also. So all these factors go as inputs to your planning of acquiring the team. What are the some of the techniques we can do? We can pre-assign a resource to the project. What do you mean by pre-assign is even before the planning is happening, before the project starts, some resources like a project manager is gets assigned to the project, because when the project is charter is made during or rather being signed off, at that time itself the organization knows what kind of project, like say for example a project manager is required to manage this level of project to be executed. At that point of time, they may the organization may actually assign a project manager right at the beginning. They may also assign some special skills team members to the project, because that is a very that's the crux of the whole deliverables. That's the criteria feature, which is the skill which is required for the product deliverable, and for which you need the identified resource. So all such where scarce resources are there, any such constraint is taken care of by pre-assigning the room. Acquiring negotiation skills, a project manager, it is very important that a project manager has the right negotiation skills to ensure that he or she negotiates and acquires the team required for the project. If there is a contractor to be hired to perform the project, in that case also negotiation skills are going to be very useful, whether it's negotiating for the skills or it's negotiating for the rates. Virtual teams, what happens is quite a few times when all the skills are not available in a single location, or for various reasons, because the resources are working from home, or they are working in a different branch office, or they are working in a different country, in a different time zone, for whatever constraint. If it is not feasible for everybody to be on a one team, virtual teams can be formed. That is one way of resolving problems of acquiring the required team, because then virtual teams can perform on the project activities. So key output of this whole planning of acquiring team would be having to all the staff assigned to the required staff assigned to the project, having updated all the resource calendars, having updated all the vacations availability, the start and the time dates periods for each of the team member or each of the resource on the team, and of course updating the overall project management plan. So this was our second business process that we talked about. So having planned a team, what are the resources required, and having acquired the team, what is the next step a project manager does, or how does he ensure the project success with the available team? So basically what we are talking about is developing the project team. This is a skill which every project manager would require to perform successfully on the project management activities. Developing team is nothing but the process of improving the competencies and the team interaction and overall enhance the project performance. What happens if the team does not get along together? How would they perform effectively? They cannot. How do you resolve such conflicts if the team has any conflict? All these things go into building a better project team, the skill which only a project manager can bring to the team. And he'll need to identify, build, motivate, lead the people as in the situation demands, as the scenario change. Unless he inspires the team to achieve the progress, the project success could be at stake. For any project to be successful, the teamwork is the most critical factor or required on the project. Without, even if you have a right team with the right skills there, but if project manager is unable to bring the whole team together, no amount of clarity in the roles and responsibilities defined is be able to make the team perform. So for effective performance management, it is very important, imperative for the project manager to develop his team based on the need of the hour. The various tools he could be using for developing the interpersonal skill. He can bring in the trainings required, which motivates people to learn new skills and also perform on the project, because as they acquire something new, they'll be more enthusiastic to perform. He can arrange for team building activities. He could have take team into consideration while planning. He can take team into consideration for looking for alternative options to resolve a conflict or a problem on the team. He could have other team building activities like parties, luncheons, and regular team building meeting, the status meetings, the project monitoring meetings, share information with them, where the project is going, where they could improve better, take suggestions from them if for a improvement, process improvement requirement. This could also be done by setting the ground rules at the start of the project. If the ground rules are set at the beginning, I'm sure the project team would not have any performance issues in terms of clarity of what their roles and responsibilities, what is acceptable and non-acceptable behavior on the project. These things basically help build team and for people to work better and get commit themselves to performance. Even recognizing teams and rewards. When I say recognizing teams, is recognizing their achievements, but like for instance, a resource has performed well on the project, he needs to be recognized, but he could be rewarded because he has performed better than what was actually was planned. So actuals are better than the planned activity, but that does not mean that every activity needs to be planned. If the planning itself has been bad in the first place, a team has planned 20 days whereas only 10 or 12 days were required. In that case, just because they have achieved it in 20 days does not mean they need to be rewarded, where the bad planning is the root cause and not the performance is the root cause. So the project manager needs to learn to identify and distinguish and discriminate between these things. The outputs typical of these processes is basically performance assessment of the team. So next is the next process we are talking about is the management of the team. Management of the project team is basically tracking the team member performance and providing feedback. Now mind you, it has to be a constructive feedback resolving issues and managing changes to optimize the project. When I say constructive feedback, the feedback is definitely required for every person to effectively perform, unless he or she knows what his performance is rated as, or what is the repercussions, whether it is effective or non-effective, or where the improvement is required, a person may not be able to perform. So, that is why when I said the performance feedback needs to basically motivate, improve, inspire the resource and not to demotivate a person. So, if there are any conflicts, those needs to be identified, they need to be resolved. All these things are part of the managing the project team. It also implies managing project team also implies team assessment of having the performance reports, giving out certificate of appreciation, sharing information with the team, newsletters, websites, maybe on the intranet, giving them recognition across the organization. There are various ways you can do it. Some of the techniques are basically how will you manage this? By observation and conservation, by project appraisal, performance appraisal. Now, performance appraisal reports could be end of the phase, it could be end of the deliverable, it could be various different ways. Similarly, conflict management. When teams perform together, there is always a scope of conflict arising. This conflicts could arise for various different things. Maybe a conflict of interest, a conflict of responsibility, a conflict of lack of tools or techniques available to resolve a problem. There could be various reasons of conflict, but those needs to be managed, and project manager would be a right person to be able to do that. A leader would be a right person to do that. There are various techniques of how again the conflict management can be confronted. That could be withdrawing or avoiding the problem totally, and just ignoring it and not even recognizing. That was one way of or smoothing or accommodating. Try to see only the brighter side of things and not look at the issues at all, or compromising, actually compromising the performance required, adjusting to your predefined requirements, or forcing something new on the team and forcing the team to accept it as the new standard, and or collaborating with the team and coming up with an alternative, or confronting it totally and saying no, this is what we have defined and this is what we need to do. So, the various techniques of how we would be managing conflict. This is a big skill which every project manager aspires to acquire, and it's also not only aspires, it is a key, one of the key ingredients for a project manager to successfully perform, that he or she knows how to manage conflicts on the project. Besides this, lot of times an issue log is maintained. Lot of issues arise while working on the project which need to be identified or recognized as an issue. It could be resolved on the project, but it could also needs to be recorded only for the reason is that tomorrow if something comes up and we want to know why we have performed a particular activity, there is a record of that, and it also helps us in managing our future projects better. It creates an historical database while planning future projects. Typical interpersonal skills every project manager would require is leadership skills, influencing skills, and effective decision making. Leadership skills is pretty straightforward. Project manager should act as a leader of the team. He is expected to have the skills required for which the project team looks up to. He should be able to influence the team or a team or the stakeholders based on what the need of the hour is, to ensure that we meet the project, resolve the current problems and find a right resolution and manage the project success, achieve the project requirements. Effective decision making, he should have the decision making skills where he knows the rights and the wrongs. End of it, you would have a typical updates the project plans, and this is project human resource plan as part of the, it would be a subset of the entire project management plan that we are talking about. Any change requests which have come up as part of the human resource plans also would be updated during this activity of human resource management. The next topic that we are going to look at is the communication management. We will go into details. We are going to talk about what are the needs of communication and the modes of communication required during project management activities. Until then, thank you.